Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here, and we're back with our weekly P&Q&C&A&T videos. This is season 6, episode 24. And as far as what these are, for our intents and purposes, they're just a Q&A with some extra letters. And the important part is that you can access this on YouTube, which is where you probably are. And if you're on the YouTube video and you want to access this on like an RSS feed, you can check out links in the description to access it on all the major RSS feeds in an audio-only format.
And I'm going to actually suggest maybe if you're used to listening to this as a podcast the last few weeks, it might be worth watching this one because we're doing something just a little bit interesting with this Flashpoint team. And we'll talk about it later and you can decide if it's worth it.
Yeah. So getting straight into the first comment that we are addressing today. This one comes from Michael Myers and they say, I want to buy a maxed out account. And then some ellipses.
Okay, so it's an interesting question, and for
well, it's not quite a question. It's an interesting comment to
it's an interesting takeoff point for some commentary.
Yeah,
because there's some implied things there that aren't stated. But so it's like it's almost like the idea of dog whistles, where it's meant for a specific audience to see that question and make some assumptions from it, and the audience I think are hackers.
Yeah.
Simply because people aren't just giving away hacked accounts
or selling
them. I guess that's true. If you might be giving away a maxed account if you're giving up on the game, but even then most people don't want to do that because it's got their personal login information.
Yeah, generally it's too valuable. Like what a maxed account is like thousands of hours of work, I would say.
Yeah. And
that's like nobody's time is that like low value that unless they're really for sure 100% getting out and they have kept up until this very moment and now is like this far no further sort of
right.
There's no way anybody's selling a max account, and I can't imagine that people are looking to give up the game and then try to find somebody to pawn it off on.
Well, it's funny this because when you start talking about that in terms of what the value is, it reminds me that there's a huge disparity in the way people value accounts. Somebody getting an account values it way less than somebody giving it away.
Yeah.
Because the time that you put in, you're right, it's huge as if it's a legitimate account. And that's part of the reason why we're talking about hacked accounts, because the amount of time that people put into hacked accounts, it may not be small, but it's definitely a lot less than somebody who's actually played it legitimately up to that point.
Yeah.
And so that's the first part that makes it interesting, because it illustrates a point really nicely for me. Like when people talk about dog whistles, this is sort of, but it's not really, because dog whistles tend to be...
has a different connotation. It tends to be like a political or like social sort of stance.
Right. But the idea behind it, I think, is kind of neat, that what you're doing is you've got a coded message basically out in the open that's meant for your audience. The second part, though...
And I mean, it's not quite coded, because I think a lot of sort of regular people understand this. For
I guess
buying
so.
a maxed out account, I mean, I think the sort of like messaging is pretty clear to most people, I would say.
Maybe, all right, so maybe in the comments, if for the dozen or so people who are still watching and listening to these videos, let me know, let us know which side you fall on. But the second part is maxed out account. So what is a maxed out account? And this touches on the second part, because it's this... The first part, there's clear intention. You're buying an account. The second part, this is actually unintentionally ambiguous, I think.
Yeah. Because the problem is that, like, what a maxed out account is, you don't necessarily want a maxed out account, right? Like, a truly, truly maxed out account is... because it can mean a bunch of stuff, right? Because maxed out just means you have everything,
so
right?
Let's go from the lowest to the highest, maybe, right? So the lowest maxed out account, it's got every single store character.
Yeah, and I think most people wouldn't define that as a maxed out account.
Right.
Probably.
But it is for somebody who's just starting to play, which is what most people who are asking for... Well, not most. I shouldn't say that. The implication is that these people who don't have their own accounts that are worth playing on.
Yeah, so that would be... I mean, I still would argue that that's probably not what people mean by a maxed out account.
Right.
Like, so almost anybody.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But then the next step would be every single challenge character. Every single previous challenge character.
Yeah.
And then you get into the questions of, all right, so is that are you going to include every multiplayer exclusive? Are you going to basically include every single character that was available in MP and every single gear that was available in MP?
That's true. Yeah.
Every survivor gear?
Yeah.
every medal, every pack exclusive,
Mm-hmm.
and are they all level 50 Elite 7? Or are we talking 60 and Elite 10, even if they never had breakthroughs?
Yeah, and that's the part where you can kind of argue what is and isn't a sort of maxed out account, because a maxed out account, if you're speaking like strictly speaking the highest that level that anything can be for how you can make it,
Yeah.
then it's higher than the highest level that anything can be for playing naturally.
Right.
So this is a part where like hacking and playing would actually have sort of like divergent paths.
Right. So if I'm going to try to rephrase that, then is a maxed out account past the point that should be possible without cheating?
Yeah, and then you also have to ask of like augmentations, I think, which is the interesting one, right? Because you'd want crit chance and crit damage on almost everybody,
Right.
but you wouldn't necessarily want health and damage on everybody. So
Right.
is it not a maxed account if you don't have augments, or is it a maxed account if you have augments but only the ones you want? Like what is maxed there?
See, in my mind, this is a max account. What we're playing with right now is a max account. We have actually enough copies of each of the characters to make this whole Flashpoint team Elite 10. We chose not to.
Yeah,
They're all Elite 5, and they're better for it,
yeah.
as you can see here. And
So and we also don't have everybody fully augmented, and we probably still don't have enough to crit chance and crit damage every single one of our characters. But we have enough that when we're trying out a new team, we can augment them.
right. So, and do they have to be level 99 on multiplayer?
Oh, you're saying like literally like the user.
Yeah.
I guess.
Oh,
so.
damn, it crashed. Okay.
Because that's sort of more of an aesthetic thing than anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
And how much currency? What counts as maxed? Like how much Valorium alloy? How much power credits? How much alliance credits?
Yeah, that's true. Do you want to have all your metal characters maxed out? So basically something that only a hacker could have. And I think for most of those, the answer is yes, you'd want all of them, right? For somebody to consider it maxed. Like store character, certainly. Previous challenge characters, yeah, if somebody's calling it a max account, you almost definitely have to have that. Every multiplayer exclusive, I would say, yeah, if you're calling it a max account, you probably want that. Gears, yeah, I would say to like the sort of working definition of max account, you'd want that.
Right.
You know, medals is when it gets weird, right?
Right.
Medals, I think, is when you get to the point where a maxed account and like a real actual account that somebody could have start to divert from each other.
Right.
Right? Like if the medals are fully upgraded,
Right.
that's a problem. And if you talk about like, you know, breakthroughs on characters that haven't had them, that's a problem. And when you talk about augmentations, I think that's not necessarily a problem as far as like it has to be hacked in, but that's a really interesting question where I don't think it's better to have what like definitionally speaking is a maxed out account there. I think that's
Right.
actually like if anything a little bit of a handicap in how much fun you're going to have.
Right. Yeah, and so if somebody's willing to spend money on an account, there's a good chance, it's implied, not stated, but there's a good chance that they do not want the account to be banned by the end of the next season.
That's true.
Because, you know, I mean, if it's so here's the thing, if it's going to be a legit account in appearance or in actuality, right? Whether it just looks like it or actually is a legit account, then you're talking about a lot more time and a lot more expertise, which many hackers don't have.
True.
What you see, I think, in especially in the forums or on Reddit when I'm looking at the subreddit for Injustice Mobile, you see lots of questions from people who are saying, "Oh, I've got all these characters, I've got them all maxed out, I can do whatever I want. Suggest a team for me."
Yeah.
And it's very likely that those people did not play much to get to where they are.
Yeah, because normally as you get a new character and level them up, right? You learn the ins and outs of them. And there's still like new stuff. Like we still like obviously solicit suggestions too.
Yeah.
But not knowing sort of what team you want to make.
So this is a good example of a hacked account that we're actually watching right now. We're fighting a full metal team. They have all their specials and dark power maxed out.
Yeah.
And their passive maxed out too. They're at Elite 7. I think they were all in level 50. So that's not going to happen. Part of it could be just from cheating and using a script kiddie. But the Valorium alloy, there hasn't been enough. I think by now, after having maxed out all the Phantom Zone replays, which we have on one account, you have maybe about 29,000 Valorium alloy, and you need 35 to max out a single character, and they maxed out all three.
So, and you know, obviously you can reset now, but even if you were playing, you know, like 5 like times as much.
Oh yeah, you can't get all
right?
three.
Yeah, it would be really hard even if you were like constantly using that like reset glitch.
And I'll say it, even though the distinction matters to us between cheating and hacking. I mean, there's even just cheating and playing over and over again, and you spending all that Valorium alloy. That still puts you at risk of having your account banned if somebody makes a report and Warner Brothers actually responds to the report.
Yeah.
Which is not a sure thing now.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Getting to our next question, I think.
So we didn't actually answer the comment, but I guess if somebody's going to buy it, I would not. Either it's to me, the final sort of thing I want to say is if it's a legit account, you're not going to want to buy it because it'll be too expensive. And if it's not a legit account, you're going to be paying for something that's not probably going to be worth that much because of the risk of playing it and losing it.
Yeah, and I think for buying a fully max account, I can't even imagine what the pricing structure on that would be, because it seems like there's sort of no happy medium that's like an amount that somebody would be willing to pay that's also an amount that makes sense for somebody to have made a fully maxed out account for.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I can't imagine that there's a lot of intersect between supply and demand pricing.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But I guess I wouldn't know. I just can't imagine, right? Like, for making a fully hacked account, I don't know exactly how much time that would take, but I'd imagine it would take hours and hours and hours and hours. And if somebody's even valuing their time at like minimum wage, I can't imagine that sort of amount of stuff added from like a fresh account to sell to somebody would be worth.
But I'm guessing what they do is they do it once, they duplicate the account, and then they just sell off the duplicates. The problem is the duplicates are vulnerable to being
banned.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would make more sense.
It's a weird economy.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Interesting, but there's still the upfront investment where they'd have to be actually selling a lot of fully accounts.
Right.
I don't know if a lot of people are buying them.
No.
I guess I just don't know enough about
that's true.
The sort of buying and selling account space. Anyways, next question comes from Julius the Shark, and they say, does anyone know why almost all cheaters have their first guy unaugmented and the other ones maxed?
Yeah, I know why, I think, but it's not actually just cheaters, it's everybody.
Yeah.
On defense. So I'm going to link this. There was a great thread on the subreddit for Injustice Mobile, and someone very industrious, actually figured this out. They had a fight with a player that was hacked. They recognized them from the leaderboard, and then they were able to find them afterwards and go to their team and show that on the team, the person in the first slot actually was maxed out.
Oh.
And Max augmented and demonstrated during the fight that it wasn't just a display error, that during the fight, despite having a maxed out character in their team, it did not show as crit augmented, and it didn't actually have any crit hits.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the cool thing is, what I'd always believed was it was just a display error and it didn't matter, but I never really paid attention because, let's face it, in their first fights, the first guy, unless they've got Astro Harness, is basically...
They go down quick.
They're dead man walking.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cool, actually, that there's somebody else who's at least as interested in experimenting with it, and it's kind of funny. I know I complain quite a bit sometimes about Injustice, but they've done so many kind of cool things with it that there's still a playability and a discoverability.
Yeah.
Even, 5 years on?
Yeah, which is impressive.
Yeah. So everybody's first character when your team is on defense does not have augmentations, and it's probably worthwhile if you're the kind of person that cares about defensive wins and fights. You do not want your maximum offensive output defensive team to be in the first slot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. Okay, our next question comes from somebody with a long username who we've answered questions from previously, who has asked us to just call them Tot now. So this is the artist formerly known as TOTMG's Rock XD, now Tot. And they say, another question. What about replacing Flashpoint Batman's Blade of the War God with the overpowered pill and focus on light basics and combo ender? Wouldn't using light basics and combo ender inflict more damage per combo, because Flashpoint Batman's light combo is 2%, 2%, 2%, and then in brackets 3%, 3%, 3% for the combo ender.
Right, yeah.
Equals 15% damage stat. and 4%, 4%, 4% equals 12% damage stat, and 15% is greater than 12%, and that also being combined with the life drain and power drain on combo ender granted by the overpower pill. And then at the end, I know my username is pretty long to pronounce, just call me Tot. We didn't save any time this time, Tot. I appreciate it. But maybe next time. Yeah. I feel like the first time, I don't know why I felt like I could have just called them Tot, but the first time I felt like I had to explain it. I don't know why I felt that need.
That's fair. Yeah, all right, so this is perfect actually for the question because it was on the Flashpoint team and we were demonstrating the Flashpoint team and we've made some adjustments. So there's always, no matter how good a team is, I think once you play it a bit, you might get a feel for how you want to play it differently.
Yeah.
And you get a better sense of what happens and where you can make an adjustment that won't cost you anything but could make an improvement.
Yeah.
All right, so the basic principle for me is combo ender doesn't happen every time. So instead of 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, without a combo ender, it's just 2 plus 2 plus 2.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and I don't actually even know if these numbers are right, but I'm going to assume that they are. As opposed to 4 plus 4 every time that you complete a swipe combo. So that becomes sometimes 15, sometimes 6. Even if you get a combo ender half the time, that's 21 divided by 2 is 10.5 on it. Or am I doing the math right? Yeah. 21, 15 plus 16 over 2 is 10.5 on average. And to me, it feels like combo ender happens less than half the time, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so you're comparing 12% to 10.5%.
Yeah. And I think one of the things about that is that even if it occurred pretty frequently, it's that reliability, it can be really, really helpful. You know, it's not always, but when you know sort of how many swipe combos is going to get somebody down to what health, right? Approximately. When you get used to it, it's better to have something that is reliable even if the number works out to be slightly lower. So in this case, it probably works out to be higher still from the swipe combo. But even if it was comparable or slightly lower, I feel like in this case, consistency is more important.
Well, there's that's absolutely true, right? Because for one, I like the rhythm of it. I like the rhythm of swipe combo because I feel like I have a better sense in terms of the characters I play when to start a swipe combo.
Yeah.
When they're coming at you so that it gets unblocked. Not guaranteed, but I have a sense.
Pretty good.
And the other part is if I'm trying to do tap combos, typically if the combo ender does not engage, I am still tapping away. Like I'm trying to tap enough to get the combo ender.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm more vulnerable at the end of my tap combo with or without the combo ender to getting hit.
Yeah, and the combo ender does require you to actually like react on the fly, and most of the time that's fine. It's not like that's like a big issue.
Oh, I miss it too. Yeah, sometimes I get the arrow, and I totally miss it.
But it's harder, right? It's more mechanically challenging. So depending on what team you want, when you're talking about Flashpoint, right? You want this to be a little bit more of a grinding team, right? So if you can afford to be a little bit less likely to screw up.
Right.
And a little bit less reliant on RNG. Both of those are pretty good in a grinding team.
Right. And I guess the specific recommendation of the Overpowered Pill, I want to point out, Overpowered Pill, the two abilities rely on the combo ender. If I'm not using them, then I'm losing out on those abilities.
Yeah.
The crit chance is higher than any other gear. It's 50%, so it's enough with just max augmented to 50 to give you pretty much full 100% basic combo crit hits.
Yeah.
But the damage boost is lower. I think it's also 50. I can't remember now. As opposed to 70% boost on some of the other 3.5 star gears that have basic damage boost and increased crit chance of 40%.
Yeah.
And so when you're facing a Red Sun team that disables all critical hits, then you're better off having...
With the damage boost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there we go. A couple small reasons, not a huge thing, but these are pretty good questions in general. I think having sort of your setups specifically challenged with other suggestions is good. Like having your setups challenged in general is fine too, because having an opportunity to think about them. But having sort of specific points of comparison and being able to work through why you feel like one is better, and maybe along the way, if you're wrong, figure out that you should be using a different gear is, I think, a sort of useful exercise.
Yeah. So this Tot actually started off, and we jumped past it. Was the first part was responding, saying that they saw our point about how to gear Deathstroke differently using League of Assassins knives instead of trying to max out Special 2. And all right, so what's interesting is, so here's the thing: once you play this team a bit, you get a sense exactly like we do that Deathstroke and Batman are the most involved and the most relevant, and they're the ones that tend to be doing all the damage output. And so it's easy to forget about Aquaman, who we're looking at now. And if you watch the beginning of the video, you'll see that we've changed his gear loadout. And instead of making him a tank, because here's the thing, he's a bit wasted as a tank.
Yeah.
Because he almost never gets in the fight. So what we've done here is we've given him a bar of power with Razzle Ghul Scimitar.
Yeah.
His first special is a bleed special 1. And bleeding, as we know, boosts damage taken by 20%. We've also given him the Quake engine, so that once the first bleed damage finishes on
it
the
triggers
first guy,
again
on the next guy.
Yeah, so he's basically like a little sort of free damage, and he's sort of like half a gear on the other team members.
That's
not
right.
like half a gear, less than that, but he's sort of his own like passive sort of level of damage boost.
Right.
I'd say approximately. And for the time that the fights last, having it on that's basically on having it on one character. And then I think if you get really lucky, you can rinse it onto the second guy, right?
Well, it's not that hard when you have Deathstroke to finish them off.
That's true.
You're ending the bleed. Like, we don't even care almost about the how much damage the bleed does or the special does.
Yeah.
It's really boosting Deathstroke's damage. So Deathstroke comes in, does a boosted. So here you go. We bust a gear. Oh, and the last gear is Claw of Horse, of course, and I'll explain why. But that 20% gear boost, the 20% boosted damage from the bleed, means that Deathstroke does even more damage than the first guy.
Yeah.
The second guy also does damage because of Quake Engine.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time the third guy tags in, there's no bleed, but he's already done a butt-ton of splash damage with League of Assassins Knives that the third guy doesn't have much health coming in.
Yeah, and this is an interesting case where, in general, it doesn't matter how much damage you deal with the bleed, where, you know, dealing more is normally better here. But in this case, the more damage you deal, the less damage over time, the less splash damage you deal. So when you deal a lot of damage with Aquaman, you don't get as much splash damage from your specials with Deathstroke. So you can actually run into cases where you don't want to deal too much damage because you want people like, you know, here with the Astro Harness, right?
Yeah.
Where you want a chance to have dealt more splash damage by the time they come in.
And in certain cases, too, I actually, like, for example, if I'm facing Justice 2 Superman first slot, I want him to block. It won't get rid of his shield, but it'll take the bleed damage. So that when Deathstroke comes in and removes the shield, when he cracks him open like a rusted can of tuna, the bleed damage is still happening. And then he does a lot of...
and he gets the special back, and it's just better overall.
Yeah. And so what you'll see in a few examples is there's going to be times where Aquaman doesn't really do much in his role as a first slot guy for a different variety of reasons. So it could be that the first opponent has Astro Harness, and that means they're not going to take damage. And you could wait until the first invulnerability goes away. But what you could also do is just go ahead and use his... Oh, there you go. Perfect. Look, he's bleeding. Justice 2 Superman blocked it, but he's still bleeding now, and we can do a bunch of boosted damage. All right, so because he's got Claw of Horus, even if the Astro Harness invulnerability is there, you don't have to wait it out. There's a 75% chance of shattering a piece of gear, so that when Flashpoint Batman comes in, which is my favorite for, you know, our Astro Harness guy against their Astro Harness guy is the best way, I think, to take care of it.
I agreed.
Yeah, and then cracking open one piece of gear, which might even be the Astro Harness, 1 in 3 chance, makes it way easier for Batman to take them out. And the reason why I favor Batman a little bit over Deathstroke is because Deathstroke doing the special with his Tantu Tome giving his power back over and over works in avoiding damage, unless they build up enough power so that their special beats yours because their latency is shorter. In which case, and because if they don't block with the Astro Harness active, then your Deathstroke special does a lot of hits, and that generates a lot of power for them.
Yeah.
So what else? Oh, the other kind of times where you'd have trouble might be with Mother Box. So if anybody on the other team has Mother Box, it takes away the bar of power, and as long as you recognize it quickly, right? What happens is when Aquaman is there and the fight starts and you try to hit special 1, it doesn't trigger. Don't keep on trying to push it because all of a sudden it'll disappear. the bar of power. And if you're still trying to push while you're waiting,
You're getting whacked.
Yeah, so just flip out to the other, to Deathstroke, have a go at it, and then, then you're fine.
Yeah, for sure.
What else are we talking about? And that's it, I think.
Yeah, we can talk about a little bit what this video is. And I mean, this looks like it's going to shape up to be a shorter episode, but so maybe we'll just have the raw footage at the end, sort of. We'll figure out how we're going to upload this,
Okay.
But this is a video showcasing playing on a new device and playing on our old device and how long it takes to do fights.
So one thing that you can see that's obvious, I mean, there's the Android controls on the right that aren't normally there.
Yeah.
And there's a timer because we're using a different quarter, and because this is not a rooted device, we don't have the in-game audio.
Although I think in settings you can do something with the Android controls and get rid of them, maybe.
Oh yeah, no, I think you can, but because of the proportions of the device, it'll distort the picture.
Yeah.
And better just to have it than to have like a stretched out,
Yeah.
for the sake of getting rid of that white, to distort the entire picture.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is, so I think it crashed in the middle of it, but the time it took to reload was about the equivalent of a fight. And I think what we're seeing is, typically with this team on this device, you can finish, or we can finish with this team, 4 ultimate ladders in 28 minutes. The first ladder crashed, so the second ladder started at 7 minutes,
Yeah.
and we're finishing this in less than 28 minutes, closer to 27.
Yeah.
A full, well, 20 minutes, I guess, after the first one. A full 3 ultimate ladders. So an ultimate ladder is worth 56,000 battle points.
Yeah.
We're averaging out every 7 minutes. So to reach 5 million battle points, which I think in a slow week might be competitive enough to get you to close to number 1, if not at number 1.
Yeah.
Close enough. I mean, definitely top 10. That means you need just over 89 ultimate ladders. And if we say it's 90 ultimate ladders, that's 90 times 7. That's 630 minutes of fighting, or 10 and a half hours, I think, if my math is right.
Yeah. In a lighter week.
Right, and 10 and a half hours, I mean, you could spread that, you're spreading that over 7 days, that's less than 2 hours a day.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot, but it's nowhere near, like, full-time job level, and some people spend, like, 40 hours a week playing video games anyways.
Yeah.
So it's manageable, and obviously it makes sense, because somebody has to be spending the time to get to that point on the leaderboard, right?
Yes.
But it just never seemed like something that was obtainable for us. Right? But when you actually run the numbers, if you're on a good device and you're going quicker like we are now, it is definitely way more attainable.
Yeah. I just, I'm part of me is tempted, maybe with a week off, to give it a go. I mean, when I used to think it was going to be, like, if you look at the older device, which is what the footage is going to be coming after this.
Yeah.
It takes about 20 minutes to do 2 ultimate ladders. And that's 10 minutes an ultimate ladder, which doesn't seem like a lot either, which is faster than maybe a lot of other teams.
Yeah.
But
it's a difference of 3 minutes per ultimate ladder, which doesn't seem like a lot for one.
But that's almost 50% more time.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess it can be prohibitive. And
it scales up.
Yeah.
Scales up quick.
And when we were looking at previous seasons where the rewards were harder to get because it was more competitive.
Or when more people were playing.
Yeah.
There was like a higher chance of somebody like playing and really seemingly almost playing nonstop. Right? For
yeah,
the
it felt
sort of amount of battle points that they ended the season.
It almost had to be different people playing on the same account because it was taking so long, like it was just taking so much time to actually do it, right?
Yeah.
So at this point, it's really just a matter of buying. I was shipping the 2 words matter and buying into batter. So it's a it's a matter of buying. Recharges to get you through the week to be able to just keep on using the same team. You don't waste time on changing gears, and you could totally easily top 10 with a couple hours a week and maybe even number 1.
Yeah.
I just might do that. Well, let's see. I wonder if anybody would even want to watch that.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Not the raw footage, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But if we could do that, do some sort of, like, maybe leaderboard check-in and chronicle a little bit of the journey, potentially.
Right.
Yeah, maybe. In other news, in saving time, this is not as these are both sort of things that are unique to us because it's a new device, that lets us do the ultimate battle faster. But for something that maybe will help us upload videos a little bit faster after we're finished, like recording them,
Right.
You got a new computer.
I did. This is my first laptop ever. Right now, what we're working with to make these videos is a first generation i7 desktop.
Yeah.
Which has a motherboard that does not allow any better CPU. So it's upgraded with the solid state hard drive.
Yeah.
A couple of 2 terabyte hard drives in it to store the videos we're making.
Yeah. So you swapped out all the other parts, but you can't
RAM's
actually swap
upgraded.
out the processor.
The part that limits it the most. So it takes, with a video that's close to an hour long, it takes more than that to finalize the video, to add the tracks, to do whatever edits we do.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that it'll speed it up and maybe make it possible for us to at least do, even when we're away, which doesn't happen often, to do the weekly updates, the recaps.
Yeah, we could do it sort of from another location as long as we had our mic with us.
All right, so what's interesting to me is how... All right, so right now we're coding this video. I don't know what the right word is. We're editing it and making it with Windows
Exporting
Movie Maker.
it, maybe.
Yeah, Windows Movie Maker. And it's very basic software.
Yeah.
It works really well. It's clean, and I don't know how much of it is that I've just gotten used to it, or whether it's actually that much better, but I haven't been able to find...
For really basic stuff?
Yeah, for really basic stuff.
Yeah.
So I wonder how much of it is that everything else is that much worse, or I've just gotten so used to doing this after how many years and how many hundreds of videos.
Yeah. I think one of the things is that I found when I'm using other video editing software, you can do stuff that you could just straight up not do in Windows Movie Maker. But because there's more functionality, there's more buttons, there's more things, right? There's more...
Right.
When you've got 100 options to do things versus 10, right? The list of 10, if you're doing one thing on that list, it's going to be easier to sort through. And that's sort of how I feel in some ways about, like, when people say that they like Apple's layout better, where it's like the same sort of thing where it's like having built-in functionality for a small number of things to be really smooth. It's going to be easier to sort through, right? It's easier to find what you want when you don't have as much variety. And if the things are picked right, then for a lot of people, they don't need to find other stuff.
Right.
And so I think for our purposes, Windows Movie Maker is sort of that for us, where there's not a lot of functionality, but there's enough for us. And because there's not a lot of functionality, it's really simple to navigate. And it's really simple to do all the stuff that we need to do.
Right.
Like, as simple as it can be.
Mm-hmm. No, I think I completely agree with you.
So there we go.
Well, sorry?
I was just going to say, no matter how much longer we ramble at the end, we're out of questions here. This is definitely going to be a bit of a short episode.
Yeah, all right. So I want to point out what this week in BDCKR land, the Raptors won the NBA Finals.
That's true.
What's interesting to me is how the pundits got it oh so wrong, and 538 had the most interesting take on it. So I was paying attention beforehand in terms of what the media was saying about the Raptors' chance. And pretty much universally, before the finals started, so this was...
Yeah.
We knew it was Golden State, we knew it was the Raptors, we knew that Golden State would have a nice long rest beforehand. We knew that Kevin Durant had been out, and there was no specific timeline for his return. So he was not a consideration. So people had already written off the likelihood of Kevin Durant being available for any or most of the series.
Yeah.
And, you don't just take away 30-something points from a lineup and not have it make the team a little bit worse.
Yeah.
No matter what people say about how good they are without Kevin Durant. And they are. But all the pundits had picked Golden State to win. They were the favorites. Excuse me. And you can see why that was the case, because Golden State had been to the finals. This will be the 5th year in a row. They had won the three previous times.
Yeah.
They had won the Western Conference 4 out of those 5 years, and the only year they didn't win it, they were second place, and that was the year they won the whole shebang at the end.
Yeah. So they've had a really, really good streak.
Yeah, and if you're going to judge a dynasty on whether they win the finals, you're not going to have a lot of dynasties ever, just because there's 30 teams now, right?
Yeah.
But if you judge them based on getting the finals, which is a huge accomplishment itself, yeah, the Golden State Warriors were the biggest. So everybody picked Golden State to win. The only thing that I saw online that hadn't was 538 using their they call it their Carmelo, and I'm not even pretend to know the nuances or know enough to be able to explain it. But they had given the Raptors a 55% chance of winning the finals.
Wow.
And Golden State 45% chance.
Which is not like a backing of one team or the other, right? That's close enough. But that's you know, that's the one that actually puts Raptors ahead of Golden State, even if only slightly.
Right. And so it's I just think it's interesting because in general that 538 has been really useful that way, whether it's elections, which I think was the original point why they called themselves 538. Whether they're talking about stats having to do with sports, that they give a better feel, whether they're ultimately right or wrong. It's like the weatherman, right? If they say that there's a 55% chance of rain, it's a toss-up. If it doesn't rain, there's still
nobody's betting on 55% like it's a sure thing.
Right. But compared to all the people who are saying, Golden State in 5, Golden State in 6, that's, I can't say that
They were wrong.
Yeah, exactly. They were all wrong.
They were all wrong, and obviously a prediction can be wrong. But I think that's one of the things that's more useful about the way that 538 even presents its data. I think there's something to be said for that too, right? Where it's less sort of definitive, but it's more useful, strictly speaking.
Yep.
So, like, as an opinion, it's less...
Bless you.
Yeah, it's less maybe interesting, right? Because what's more interesting is giving a narrative, right? Stats aren't really don't have the same sort of sticking power, I think, in people's minds, right? As stories do. And so the narrative that Golden State is going to win in X number of games and here's why makes more sense than we've crunched the numbers in a way that you probably won't understand, and here's a percent, and it could go either way. But you know, when you have sort of a good way of analyzing your data, or you recognize the shortcomings and you have sort of something like that, right? Like the percent, that actually is a lot more, strictly speaking, useful. It's better. It's better information to have.
It's funny you should mention story, because one of my favorite conventions we went to was actually NerdCon, which was about storytelling, but that's sort of even an aside from an aside.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why it was such a great story was how everybody in Canada came together for the Raptors, and it was sort of a perfect storm almost.
Yeah.
In what was happening in the short term, but long term, because I mean, there was originally a second Canadian expansion team for the NBA, and they were the Vancouver Grizzlies, and they were unsuccessful, and they got bought out and moved to Memphis.
Yeah.
So that makes the Raptors the only Canadian NBA team.
Yeah, so it really is a rallying point in a way that, like, hockey teams couldn't be.
Well, exactly. So, and on top of that, so, there's so many Canadian hockey teams, but the last Canadian hockey team was bumped out of the NHL finals, because usually the NBA and NHL compete for attention, right, from sports fans.
Yeah.
So the NHL lost the last Canadian team, I think, sometime around like the Raptors 76ers series.
Yeah.
So then anybody who was a
sports
hockey fan,
interested in general,
right, and was now no longer, at least in Canada, committed to watching or interested in the NHL finals.
The same way, yeah. So it gave Canada sort of a spot at the table that was the main focus, and there was not a lot to take away from it, and there was not a lot of reason to there goes my phone. There's not a lot of reason to have sort of split opinions, right? So there weren't people sitting somewhere in Canada going, oh, well, I'm glad that Canada's still in it, and I'm glad that the Raptors are in it, but it sucks that my team got knocked out. There was nobody to feel sad for their own team in Canada.
And all right, so on top of that, then you're probably saying, what about the Jays? Because there's three major sports, there's other professional teams.
Or you don't care or know about sports in Canada, and you weren't saying, what about the Blue Jays? But now you might be.
Yeah, so there's the three majors, right? In Canada, at least, are Major League Baseball, NBA, and NHL.
Isn't lacrosse our national sport, technically?
It is, and there is a Toronto Rock team, but you've got the same split there's more than one Canadian team, and I believe there's more than one Canadian team, I'm not sure, and the audience for it is relatively small.
Yeah.
Like the same way as Major League Soccer, where I think the Toronto FC is considered, I mean, the North American teams are considered not as good as the European teams.
Yeah.
The same way, you know, NHL hockey, it's North American, but it's considered better than European league, same with the NBA.
Yeah.
So the digression is the Jays are having a crappy season.
So people don't care about them either.
It's total rebuilding year. They are barely out of last place in the American League East, and only because Baltimore is having a worse season. They've basically given up on winning. They've brought up a bunch of the kids, which is great to watch, but you're not as committed about the outcome the same way, right? I want to see Cavan Biggio, who's the son of Craig Biggio. Oh, actually, that's interesting too. So there's Cavan Biggio, there's Vlad Guerrero, so you got two sons of Hall of Famers on the team, and you've got a lot of not rookies, but first or second year guys, second and third year guys, and it's getting to be a really young team. They've dumped a lot of their salaries, they dumped a lot of the old guys, and it's obviously a rebuilding year.
Yeah.
So perfect storm. The Jays aren't holding everybody's attention the same way. The NHL doesn't have a Canadian team left in the middle of the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
And there's only one one Canadian NBA team. So there was a parade. Did you hear about the parade?
I
or did you
did.
see the coverage of it?
I heard some about the parade.
That there was well over 1 million, maybe over 2 million people.
Yeah.
And that's like real numbers, not Trump numbers. At the parade, and I'm looking at City Hall and all these people crowded in there. I'm thinking, what if they need to pee? Where are they going to go? And if they go, even if they make it to the washroom and it doesn't take them a couple of hours, in which case they'll miss everything that's going on, how do they even get their spot back? Who's going to let them push back into where they were?
I think you just don't. I think you just do your best and make it work.
Yeah, but it was impressive because when they were interviewing people, there were people from like Montreal, like people who come a decent amount of distance, people who would not care if the Toronto Maple Leafs won their first NHL Finals Stanley Cup since '67.
Yeah.
First time in
I'm saying yes. I don't actually know.
Yeah, I don't remember either, but it's a long time. So the Leafs haven't won in that long.
Yeah, but it unified Canada in a way that I think a lot of other sports probably wouldn't. And and definitely you see it more in, Toronto, right, in the surrounding area.
Yeah.
So we are seeing sort of the probably biggest level of it, but it definitely, got everyone together a little bit, everyone who cared about sports.
So
it's cool.
I've been following Raptors for a long time, but even if I didn't, I think this would have been like a great thing.
Yeah.
For Toronto.
So there we go. We managed to get a lot of it, but I think we're gonna maybe let the rest of this footage play out.
Or how about this other alternative? I would love to comment. We haven't commented on this team specifically, the new version of it, while it's playing.
Oh, that's
There's
true.
only a couple fights left.
Okay, so this is not going to be good for a podcast listening audience, but here we go.
So this is what you see is Aquaman. He did the bleed, and even though Arkham Origins Batman had I can't even remember what it's called. Is it the brandished? Is it the katana? It's the one that soaks up the splash damage, so it keeps everybody protected, and that will also generate power from absorb splash damage.
Yeah.
So that's why you see sometimes people either getting power really fast or tagging in with 3 bars of power when we've got a splash damage team. All right, so the biggest danger on this other team is going to be Catwoman. And because she's not hacked, she's not going to be as bad, and because she's not in first slot with a couple of Batman Ninja teammates, I don't have to worry about her surprising us. So this is going to be a simple one. So unless somebody has the mother box, then it'll be Aquaman with his trident.
Yeah.
Bleed. The perfect. Didn't do a lot of damage. We're going to do a lot of damage with the boosted.
And a lot of splash damage.
Yep.
So there we go.
And because it didn't take us as many hits, we saved enough hits at the end of the special one that when Raven tagged in, she did not take our power from us.
Yeah. Good all around.
Yeah.
Nice and quick. Yeah, so this is a good example of where dealing more damage with the special one from Aquaman would probably not have been good.
It would have been worse, but what helps us is the fact when Raven is tagging in and can take our power, that we finish with a few extra hits of our special one left.
Yeah.
And it seems like anytime you have a multi-hit special one, it will protect you from any kind of negative effects from the opponent tagging in.
Mm.
And so in this case, all right, so Batman is going to have 2 bars. We don't care. We're going to just bleed him. And the biggest danger will be Raven potentially taking away our health if she tags in first. She doesn't. Bane is there. He's going to have a second bar of power really soon. There we go. And we don't care. And if we do our splash damage right, then...
Nice.
Oh, I was hoping that wouldn't trigger her passive, but
Who
it doesn't matter.
cares? Yeah, we don't have any health left, but it's not like you get ranked based off of what margin you win by.
It's not like Survivor.
Yeah, that's true. Every point of damage does not count.
Yeah, and we've got just what, like 1 or 2 fights left? One fight left.
There we
Okay,
go.
and so this is it. So we can just talk through the last one. So who's this? This is not going to be... Oh, medals. And not hacked. So they don't have all their
Sweet.
specials maxed out.
The interesting thing is medals that aren't hacked aren't very good.
Right.
Like, having a full medal team is not actually like a
Right.
threat when they're not maxed out. And even when they're maxed out, they're still manageable.
So the only reason I checked Nightwing was because when we just go ahead and reduce Catwoman's health to nothing, she's going to get a revive by tagging out, or not revive, she's going to get saved by Nightwing, and I just want to make sure Nightwing wasn't going to do anything special or dangerous. So bleed her out, and we're going to... The risk is because... The variation here is because Nightwing's going to tag in. That's why it was easier to bring in Batman and hopefully finish off or trigger the save on Catwoman while he still had his immunity, which he did, and it protected him from taking too much damage. Uh-oh. Alright, so we'll tag in Batman because he's got the bar, the power, maybe stun, and if he does... Oh, and he did not. But if he'd stunned, that would have given us enough chance to do a swipe combo which would have knocked him out.
Yeah. Look at that. We're having some frame troubles. Or we were. Okay, we're just about out. Come on. Come on. There we go. Okay. So that was our last fight in the old device. And you can see how it takes vastly more time.
Yeah. Okay. That was 20 minutes compared to... 20 minutes for 2 as compared to 21 minutes or just under 21 minutes for 3 fights. 3 ultimate ladder fights.
So there we go. If you watch our videos, you already know about our Patreon, so we're just going to skip it this time and go straight to thanking people. So a huge, huge thank you to all the people who have made the choice to support us on Patreon. We have Console Peasant, who is supporting us at the highest last word tier, John Auriemma at the Your Message Here tier, Shawn Farrell, Daniel Simonson, and Aaron Maule, who support us on the credited level, not to mention Eddie G, Chris Wolf, and Laszlo Georgiades at the gratitude level. Thank you all so much, and thanks so much to each and every one of you just for watching, listening, engaging, whatever you do. We'll see you next time. Komoda!